All my life, I never asked for much. Just a roof that didn't leak. A bed to rest these tired bones. And a porch where I could sit and feel the breeze at the end of the day. That house on Maple Street? That was my dream come true. I moved into that house almost 50 years ago. Back then, it was just me, my husband Henry, and 2 little ones, Marcus and Denise. The floors were creaky, the paint was chipped, and the roof leaked when it rained. But it was ours. Ours. Henry built half of it himself. He laid the tiles in the kitchen, painted the porch railings, and planted that magnolia tree out front. I can still smell the blossoms in the spring, sweet and strong, just like him. That tree grew tall, watching us grow old. It saw everything, our laughter, our fights, our Sunday mornings full of gospel music and bacon on the stove. Back then, that house was alive. Marcus would run through the halls, chasing the dog, knocking over picture frames. Denise would sit at the table with her dolls, pretending she was the teacher. I'd stand in that kitchen, watching them from the window, thanking the Lord for every noise they made. The noise meant life. It meant family. After Henry passed, that house became my world. I remember sitting in his chair by the window every evening, talking to him like he was still there. Told him about my day, about the neighbors, about how Marcus got promoted and Denise was starting her own family. That house listened when nobody else did. It held me when the world felt empty. I fixed every leak myself after he was gone. Painted every wall. The house might have been old, but I kept it shiny. Even when the roof sagged and the steps creaked, I'd look around and smile because every corner had a story. Every scratch on the wall had a memory behind it. That house wasn't made of bricks. It was made of moments. The laughter of my children, the smell of cornbread cooling by the window, the sound of Henry's record player humming through the nights. I thought I'd die there, sitting in that same old chair, watching the magnolia bloom one last time. I didn't know then that the same home that held my whole life would be the one thing my children would take from me. That house was my heart, and soon I'd find out. Even hearts can be sold. You can feel it sometimes, before it happens. That heaviness that creeps into your bones. That little whisper from your body saying, something ain't right. I'd been ignoring it for weeks. Just telling myself I was tired. You know, the kind of tired that sleep can't fix. It started with small things. I'd forget where I put my glasses. The floor would tilt under my feet when I walked too fast. I'd wake up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. But I brushed it off. Old folks always do. We tell ourselves, it's just age. A little rest, and I'll be fine. That Friday morning, I remember the sky was gray, looked like rain was coming. I went to water my magnolia tree, the one Henry planted before he passed. I always talked to it like it could hear me. Told it about my day, about the kids, about how quiet the house had become. But that day, I couldn't even finish. My chest felt tight. My breath, short. I leaned on the porch rail, trying to catch myself. The world started spinning. The air felt thick, like I was breathing through cloth. I remember whispering, Lord, not yet. Please, not like this. I stumbled back into the kitchen. My hands were shaking. So bad I dropped my coffee cup, watched it hit the floor and shatter into 100 little pieces. I reached for the counter, but my knees gave out. My whole body felt heavy, like my bones turned to stone. I hit the ground hard. Couldn't move, couldn't call for help. I just laid there watching that clock tick keen on the wall, every second louder than the last. And I thought, so this is how it ends. But God must have still had a plan for me. 'Cause not too long after, I heard someone bang on the door. My neighbor, Miss Lee. She must have seen I hadn't picked up the mail. She came in calling, Beth, you home? I tried to answer, but my voice was gone. She found me on the floor, called 911. I remember seeing her face hovering above mine, her lips moving but my ears ringing too loud to catch a word. Next thing I knew, The paramedics were lifting me onto a stretcher. The last thing I saw before the doors closed was that magnolia tree. Through the window, the wind had picked up, and petals were falling all over the porch, like the house was saying goodbye. I don't remember much after that. Just the cold air of the hospital, the blinding lights, the sound of people shouting numbers I didn't understand. They said I had a heart attack. They said I was lucky. But when I opened my eyes in that ICU room, I realized luck ain't always a blessing. 'Cause sometimes surviving just means you get to watch the people you love break your heart while you're still breathing. When I came to, everything was bright, too bright. The air smelled like bleach and plastic. A machine beside me hissed every few seconds, breath in for me when I couldn't. I tried to move my hand, but the tubes pulled tight, reminding me how fragile I'd become. The doctor leaned over me, smile polite but tired. "Mrs. Brown," he said, "you had a heart attack. You're lucky Miss Leela found you when she did." Lucky. That word again. I nodded, but inside I wondered what's lucky about walking up to a world that don't feel like yours anymore. The first few days passed in a blur. Nurses came and went, whispering about charts and vitals. Every time they asked how I felt, I wanted to tell empty. But I just smiled, said, "I'm hanging on." Hanging on to what? I didn't know. Then one afternoon, I heard voices outside my room, familiar ones. Marcus and Denise. My children? My heart lifted at first. I thought, finally, they came. Maybe they'd hold my hand, pray with me. But as I listened, my smile faded. Marcus said, "The doctor says she might not come home. Somebody's got to deal with the property before the bills pile up." Denise snapped, "We can't keep paying taxes on that place. You know how much the market's worth right now?" He laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Exactly. It's better we handle it now than wait for probate." I felt the air leave my body. I wasn't gone yet. I was right there, listening. They were talking about my house, my home, like it was a line on a spreadsheet. My chest burned, not from the heart attack, but from something colder. A nurse walked in, checking the monitors. I whispered, "Can you close the door, please?" She did, bless her, but their voices still slipped through the cracks. "If we sell fast, we can split it 50-50, Marcus said. Denise replied, "Fine, but I'm not waiting around for her to recover just to change her mind." Then the sound of papers rustling, papers. I realized they'd already started. Maybe they'd found the deed in my desk drawer. Maybe they'd talked to someone at the bank. I'll never know. But I knew then the children I raised weren't the same people standing in that hallway. I wanted to scream, to tell Emma I was still here, that I could hear every word. But the mask pressed against my face, the oxygen hiss drowning out my voice. So I just lay there, tears sliding down into my hair, listening as they tore apart the life I built. When the nurse came back, she wiped my cheeks and said, "Don't you cry now, Miss Beth, focus on getting better." I nodded. But inside, something broke clean in two. Those hospital walls heard everything, the lies, the greed, the betrayal, but they also heard my promise. If God let me live, I'd never let that kind of darkness touch my soul again. I thought maybe I'd heard wrong. Maybe the medicine was playing tricks on me. Nobody could be that cold, not my children. So I told myself I imagined it. That's what we mothers do, don't we? We protect our children, even when they're the ones hurting us. Days passed. I got a little stronger, but every time that door opened, my heart stopped hoping. They didn't come back much after that day. The nurses said, "Your children called. They're taking care of things at home." Those words should have brought me peace. Instead, they made my stomach twist. One morning, Clara, my favorite nurse, bless her soul, came in looking uneasy. She'd been with me since my first night in ICU. She always talked gentle, never rushed me. That day she hesitated before talking my vitals. Finally she said, "Miss Beth, your son stopped by earlier. He asked where you keep your house papers." My heart skipped. I asked, "What did you tell him?" She said, "I told him I don't know, ma'am." "That's your business." Her voice shook. She looked sorry, like she'd said something wrong. I didn't say another word. Just stared at the wall, the same white wall I'd been staring at for weeks. That wall had seen every tear, every prayer, every piece of my soul unravel. And now it saw the moment I realized my children weren't waiting for me to come home. They were waiting for me to be gone. 2 days later, Miss Leela came to visit my neighbor, my oldest friend. She sat by my bed, talking like she always did. Then she said something that froze my blood. "Beth, I saw a realtor's sign going up in your yard yesterday. Did you finally decide to sell?" I felt the room spin. I said, "What sign?" She frowned. "For sale, honey. Right out front." I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. I grabbed her hand, weak as I was, and whispered, "They wouldn't." Not without telling me. But she looked away, eyes full of pity. That's when I knew. It wasn't a misunderstanding. My babies were selling, the only thing I had left. The home Henry built with his own 2 hands. I lay there that night with my face turned to the wall, crying like a child. I didn't cry 'cause of the money or the house. I cried 'cause of what it meant. That somewhere along the way, the love I gave him turned into greed. The next morning, the nurse read my chart out loud. Patient shows improvement. Emotional state, fragile. She had no idea how right she was. My heart was mending on one side and breaking on the other. Every day after that, Clara made sure I ate. She'd bring me warm soup and whisper, "You're gonna be okay, Miss Beth." But I could see it in her eyes. She knew what happened. Everyone did, except the ones who should have cared. By the end of that week, strangers were walking through my yard. Neighbors told me later, they saw open house signs. People peeking through my windows. My home, the place I built a family in, was now just another listing on someone's clipboard. The doctors said my heart was getting stronger. Funny thing though, they don't measure the part that hurts the most. They can fix the beats, but not what breaks between them. Each day, my body healed a little. I could sit up longer, walk a few steps with help, eat a few bites without feeling sick. The nurses smiled when they saw my numbers improve. They said, "You're a fighter, Miss Beth." And I was. But they didn't know what kind of fight it was. I wasn't fighting the sickness anymore. I was fighting the ache of knowing. My children had already buried me in their hearts. Every night, after the lights went low, I'd stare at the ceiling and wonder where Marcus and Denise were. Were they sleeping peaceful in their homes? Did they even think about me? I used to dream they'd walk in the next morning, say they were sorry, say it was all a mistake. But dreams don't visit you much when your heart's this tired. The loneliness came in waves. It would sneak up quiet during breakfast, or in the middle of the nurse changing my sheets. One second I'd feel fine. The next my eyes would sting and I'd have to bite my lip to keep from sobbing. That's what heartbreak does. It don't announce itself. It just sits beside you, waiting. Clara noticed. She always did. She was young, maybe 25, but she had an old soul. The kind that could see pain before you spoke it. She'd bring me tea instead of that bitter coffee. Brush my hair real gentle and say, "You're looking stronger today, Miss Beth." And I'd smile, even if it was a lie. One night, I couldn't sleep. The machines beeped slow, steady, like a clock counting down. Clara came in to check my 4, saw my eyes open, and said, "You want me to sit a while?" I nodded. We didn't talk much, just sat there in the quiet. After a bit, she started humming an old hymn. "His eye is on the sparrow." Lord, I hadn't heard that song since Henry's funeral. It took everything in me not to cry. When she finished, she looked at me and said, "You got somebody waiting for you at home." I hesitated, then whispered, "I used to." She didn't ask again. Just reached out, held my hand, and said, "You're not alone tonight." I can't explain it. But those 4 words stitched a tiny piece of me back together. From then on, Every time Clara walked in, the room felt lighter. I started eating a little more, sitting up straighter, trying to match the hope I saw in her eyes. My body was mending, and maybe, just maybe, my spirit was too. Still, at night, I'd think about my house. I pictured strangers walking through my kitchen, touching my walls, laughing in the rooms I once prayed in. The thought tore me apart. But then I'd remember Clara's voice. "You can lose a home, ma'am, but not your soul." And I'd whisper back, "Lord, if you can't give me my home back, at least give me peace." That was the first time in weeks I slept through the night. My heart still ached, but it beat steady. The doctors said I was recovering. They didn't know that what healed me wasn't medicine. It was mercy. The day they told me I could go home, I cried. Not from joy, from fear. I wasn't sure I had a home to go back to. Still, I told myself maybe it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe my children realized what they'd done and fixed it before I got there. Hope's a funny thing. It'll lie to you just so your heart can keep beating. Clara came with me that day. She didn't have to. Her shift was over. But she said she wanted to see me home safe. The ride was quiet. I stared out the window at the same streets I'd known my whole life, but somehow, they looked different. Smaller, colder. Every house we passed reminded me of mine. Warm curtains, kids playing in the yard. The smell of someone's Sunday roast drifting in the air. When the car turned onto Maple Street, my heart started pounding. I saw the corner store Henry used to stop at, the same cracked sidewalk I'd walked for 40 years. And then, I saw it. Or rather, I didn't. The house was gone. My yellow house with the white porch railing. The magnolia tree Henry planted out front. The window where I used to watch the rain, all of it, gone. In its place stood a brand new house. Fresh paint, new roof, shiny mailbox with someone else's name on it. I froze right there on the sidewalk, my cane shacking in my hand. Clara touched my arm and whispered, "Miss Beth, you okay?" But I couldn't speak. I just kept looking. I felt like a ghost standing in front of my own grave. There were children playing in the yard, not mine. A woman stepped out on the porch, smiled polite, and waved like I was a stranger. And I guess I was. That house didn't remember me anymore. I walked a little closer. The magnolia tree was gone too. Just a patch of new grass where its roots used to be. I thought of Henry, how he'd stood there that day, digging the soil, saying, "This tree'll outlive both of us." But it didn't. My children had cut it down, just like they cut me out. I couldn't stand any longer. Clara helped me to the curb, and I sat there, looking at that house. I whispered, "They didn't even leave a piece of me here." She knelt beside me, eyes full of tears, and said, "Then we'll build you a new piece somewhere else." But I just shook my head. You can't rebuild memories, sweetheart. You can only remember what they cost. I don't know how long I sat there. The sun started to set, the sky turned gold, and the windows of that new house glowed warm, like mine used to. I realized then, I wasn't just losing a home. I was losing the last proof that I ever had one. That night, Clara drove me to a small apartment on the edge of town. A place the hospital helped arrange. It was clean, quiet, empty. She helped me inside, turned on a lamp, and said, "It's not much, but it's safe." I looked around, nodded, and whispered, "Safe is enough." But deep down, I knew what I'd lost couldn't be replaced. They sold my house while I was still breathing. They took the walls that held my laughter, the floors that carried my steps, the rooms that heard my prayers, but the one thing they couldn't take was the part of me that still believed love means something. Evening ambience, crickets outside, the hum of a streetlight. Beth's voice comes in calm and steady, aged by acceptance. Time has a way of settling debts. It don't need your permission, and it don't move fast. But when it comes sure. I'd been in that little apartment about 6 months. I kept it tidy, bought a second-hand chair, Hung one of Henry's old photos on the wall. Some nights I'd sit by the window with my tea and tell myself, *You're still here. That means something. Asterisk. Greater than. Clara still visited every Sunday. We'd share peach pie, talk about her long shifts, pray before she left. She said my strength inspired her. I told her it wasn't strength, that was survival. Then one morning the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. Folks didn't call much. But when I picked it up, a voice said, "Mama." Marcus, greater than. He sounded different, small somehow. Told me he'd lost his job. Said the man he'd trusted to invest his money ran off with it. I listened. Didn't interrupt. After a long pause I said, "Sometimes what we lose ain't punishment. Sonny, it's correction." He cried then. I could hear the shame in every breath. I didn't gloat. I just said, "You'll get through it if you stop chasing what don't belong to you." A few weeks later, Denise showed up at my door. First time I'd seen her since the hospital. She looked worn down, eyes red, shoulders slumped. She didn't even knock proper. Just whispered, "Mama, can I come in?" I made her tea. She held the cup, but didn't drink. Said her husband had left, took the car, the savings, everything. She tried to smile through it, but the hurt sat deep. I said, "Baby, you remember what I used to tell you? You can't build happiness on someone else's hurt, it'll sink every time." She nodded, tears fallen into her tea. They both came back a few more times after that. Helped me fix things, took me to appointments. Not out of obligation, I could see it in their faces. It was remorse. Life had shown what I couldn't. Greed don't keep you warm when the cold sets. I never asked God to punish my children. I just asked him to teach them, and he did. He didn't send fire or thunder, just life. Enough loss to make them understand what love was worth. Enough silence to hear their own hearts again. Now, sometimes Marcus calls just to talk. Denise brings me flowers from the market, cheap ones, but she picks them herself. We sit on my porch, what little porch I got, and laugh a little. Greater than. The hurt don't vanish, but it softens. Like a scar that still aches when rain's comin', but you learn to live with it. That's the thing about karma. Folks think it's revenge, but it ain't. It's education. It teaches you what you made others feel, and sometimes, if you listen close, it brings you back home, not to a house, but to the truth. My children lost what they thought mattered, and found what truly did. And I learned that forgiveness is the last thing you own when everything else is gone. Every morning now, I wake before the sun. I make my coffee, open the curtains, and watch the light touch the walls of this little apartment. It's small, quiet, nothing fancy, but it's mine. And most of all, it's peaceful. I used to think peace was something you had to earn. Something that came after a perfect life. Greater than. But the Lord showed me different. Peace don't come when everything's right. It comes when you stop fighting what's wrong. It comes when you let go. There was a time I couldn't say my children's names without feeling pain twist in my chest. Now I can say with love again. I pray for Marcus every night, that he finds steadiness in his work. I pray for Denise, that she learns her heart's still worth something greater than. And I thank God that they still call, still come by from time to time. We don't talk about the house anymore. There's no need. Some things don't need answers. They just need grace. Clara still visits, too. Every Sunday, same as always. She brings biscuits, sets on the table, and says, "Look at you, Miss Beth, stronger than ever." We laugh, we pray, and sometimes we just sit quiet, listening to the world outside. She tells me her mama calls me her second mother. I tell her that's funny, 'cause she's been my angel all along. I got a shelf now with 3 things on it. Henry's photo, that little Bible the hospital chaplain gave me, and one magnolia blossom Clara pressed in a frame. It's from a new tree she planted outside her clinic. She said, "Every time it blooms, I'll think of you." And when I see it in that frame, I remember life always finds a way to grow again. People ask me sometimes if I ever wish I could go back. Back to that house. Back to before the sickness. Before the hurt. And I tell em, no. Because if I hadn't lost that home, I never would have found myself. The walls are gone, but the foundation's still here, built on faith. On forgiveness, on lessons I didn't want but needed. So here's what the Lord taught me. You can lose your health, your house, even the love you thought would never leave. But if you keep your heart soft and your faith steady, He'll build you a new kind of home right inside your spirit. A place no one can sell, no one can steal. I thought they took everything from me. But they didn't take my mercy. And that, I've learned, is where real strength lives. The Lord gave me peace in exchange for pain. That's the trade I'll never regret.